So what a little history on ear cropping. So we don't know exactly when the practice first took place, but we do know it's been going on for a long time. The Romans have had it in their recorded history for thousands of years. They would commonly take war dogs with them on their battle campaigns, and one of the things they did with their dogs is they cut the ears and they cut the tails off. Um, the statue here in the picture is a pretty famous statue called the Jennings dog, and it's a statue of a Roman guard dog. And the statue was made in 200 BC, so long time ago. And one of the key attributes of the statue is it shows the dog has its tail completely docked and both of its ears completely removed. The next entry point on the timeline of ear cropping is going to come around the 1800s in Western Europe. And this coincides with the rise in popularity of dogfighting. So in countries like England and Ireland and Germany and Spain, the sport of dogfighting becomes very, very popular. And for some, it becomes a very profitable business. And this is where we'll see old paintings and block prints and early black and white photos of dogs, and many of them will have their ears completely removed. This next bulletin point on the history of ear cropping is what I call the modern era. So this is early to mid 1900s onward. And what's happened is now dogfighting has been banned in most of the Western world. And dog showing has now become popular amongst the elites. And for breeds specifically from England and Germany, some of them, ear cropping now becomes a breed standard. So we've moved on from the practicality of ear cropping, um, and with it being associated with dogfighting, and now it's become this purely cosmetic procedure where if you want to show that dog, if you want to breed that dog, it has to look a certain way. And for many breeds, this includes cropping its ears. The first type of ear cropping is, the oldest form, certainly the most archaic form, and that is just the cutting and removing of the external ear. Um, it has its practical purposes. This was done for war dogs and fighting dogs and guard dogs and herding dogs. And this is where the owner would elect to just remove the ear when it's a puppy to avoid it getting bitten or injured later on down the line uh, if it came into an altercation with another dog or a wolf or a coyote. Um, in modern times, this is associated with the bully breeds, so all the different pit bull variations, and as well as the Cane Corso. Um, it has its different lengths and styles, but it's pretty, it's pretty bare bones. They take the puppy to the veterinarian takes a scalpel blade, cuts it to the preferred length, and stitches it up, and that's basically all it is to it. The next type of ear cropping is the surgical ear cropping, and it's a much more complicated procedure than the first one. Here, the puppy, around 6 to 12 weeks of age, is taken to the veterinarian where, a pretty intrusive surgery takes place. The veterinarian cuts the ear a certain way, redirects the cartilage in a certain way, applies splints, bandages, has to tie them together, make sure they're erect, make sure they're in the right direction, and requires several rechecks and follow-ups, um, and has a longer healing process. And this is where you'll see issues arise, where one ear will grow in a different direction. You'll see infections, you'll see injuries. So it's a much more intrusive process. And this is famously associated with the Doberman, as well as the Great Dane, boxers, and the giant schnauzers. And this is considered just a cosmetic procedure. So this is done just to meet breed standards. These are what I would consider three good examples of ear cropping. So we have one of a giant schnauzer, then a boxer, and then a Cane Corso. So here are three really bad examples of ear cropping, and they're examples of what can go wrong. So the first one, the dog's, the tissue on his ear actually turned necrotic. It probably wasn't bandaged right, wasn't splinted right, and it just started to die off. So that dog actually lost its ears. The next one, similar thing. The ears on the Doberman were not kept upright, and the tissue just started to curl in on itself. So it's a good example of just a botched surgery. And then the third one is a pit bull where the ears actually got infected, which can be a very common thing with ear cropping. Many people are now against ear cropping. The first reason is they just think it's cruel. They find no value behind it anymore, and they just think you're putting your animal through unnecessary pain. The second is people find it unhealthy. They think about all those botched surgeries. They think of all those infections that could possibly happen. And the third is they just found it outdated. Hundreds of years ago, maybe there was a really good reason for it. You were thinking of the dog's best interest, removing the ear, taking away the threat of that ear getting bit and ripped off. But nowadays, people aren't fighting dogs. People aren't using dogs in war. People aren't worried about wolves and coyotes coming and attacking their dogs. So they just think it's simply an outdated procedure. There are still some people who are for ear cropping. There are a small group of people who even argue that it's more natural. Big, floppy, droopy ears are a trait that has been bred into dogs. No wild canine has ears like that. The wolf, the coyote, the fox, the jackal, the dingo, they all have upright ears. So some say, hey, this is more natural. And because of that, they think this is improving their hearing. And they also think this makes the dog less susceptible to infections. And then there's a small group who they simply do it because they like the looks. They think this is the breed standard, this is the tradition, we want to make the dog look like this, and they're going to keep doing it. They think the dog is their property, and they have the right to make it look like how they want to look. So what does the future of ear cropping look like? Currently, the American Kennel Club, the AKC, recognizes 20 breeds where ear cropping is part of their standard. However, that may be changing in the future. There are many countries, including England, Sweden, Holland, Australia, where ear cropping is just outright banned. And within those countries, the major show competitions there don't allow dogs that have their ears cropped to compete. This may become the norm in America as well, and that would even further influence people to not get their dogs' ears cropped. So who knows, in 10, 20 years, ear cropping may be completely seen as something from the past.